Welcome in again, everyone. We've been looking forward to this one for a long time. A return visit for a Wayside Furniture Blind & Sons Studio C session with the phenomenal singer-songwriter that is Craig Finn, passing through on his way to Chicago. We'll get to that here a little bit later. The sixth album, titled Always Been, available now on Tamarack Recordings via 30 Tigers. Welcome in, Craig Finn. Craig, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Really good to be back here. Well, back here in the new studio, which is maybe not super new to me.
Yeah. You were here previously for a Studio C session, March 19th, 2016, at our old location. We moved in here fall of 2019, and then we did a Zoom session with your band, The Hold Steady, on April 1st, 2021. So 3 different appearances in 3 different places, kind of. So I think that covers it all, right?
Yeah, I'm glad to be back in person.
Glad to be back in person is right. Craig Finn joining us here with a room full of Summit members. Very happy to have you here. And let's get started. What song do you have for us first?
I'm going to play the first song off my new record. It feels like the right place to start. It's called Bethany, and it goes like this. In the later afternoon, it sort of softens on the avenue, wasting the remainder of the day. Drinking off what's left of the glasses on the table, when the couples get their checks and walk away. And I'll be here tomorrow and then every day that follows, until I see you later on this week. Will you come and pick me up when I get up off the bus? Will you help me bring my stuff out to the beach? When we met, I was the reverend. You were in the congregation. Didn't happen right away, but pretty soon. And I never had a calling, I just had a strong desire to be the one that stood up in the room. So when I was a child, I used to fixate on the chaplain, the way he brought those widows all to tears. That looked like a decent way to make a little living here. I gave myself to God for a few years. Built a chapel off the exit on the highway outside Harrisburg. There was all that new development back then. Parishioners would come to me with cakes and little pastries and ask me for my blessing once again. But I couldn't shake the feeling I was faking all the faithfulness, and every single sermon was a fraud. Drifted through the rituals, prideful, high and pitiful, pissing off a petty, vengeful God. Pissing off a petty, vengeful God. Parents are both ancient now. I'm staying at their summer house, clear out on the weekends when they come. To my sisters with her daughter on the fringe of Philadelphia, with their skinny cigarettes and snapping gum. But I'm grateful for the place to stay. I'm caddying on Saturdays. The money's not as good as it was when we were teenagers. Walk back from the golf course, cut through a couple backyards. Try to keep my eyes pointed heavenward. In another prior life, the Reverend and his wife were sitting in the kitchen making plans, unaware of all the mess, the pressure in the flesh is capable of making in a man. But I never really fell, 'cause I was never quite convinced, though I must admit I miss all the simplicity of a woman and a man. Though I also understand the reasons you no longer want to be with me. I can see why you no longer want to be with me. The devil came in hot, then someone called the cops. I explained to them how much it is you mean to me. The cuffs, they made a click as they wrapped around my wrists, Everybody's got some version of security. Somewhere there's a life where the Reverend has his wife and Jesus has his ministry in Galilee. But the sunset looks like blood from the windows of the bus, somewhere between Harrisburg and Bethany. Somewhere between Harrisburg and Bethany. Somewhere between Harrisburg and Bethany.
Craig Finn here in Studio C for our Summit members. Another Wayside Furniture, Blind & Sons Studio C session, as his new 6th solo record titled Always Been is available now on Tamarack Recordings via 30 Tigers, passing through our area to perform in Studio C. And Craig, again, congrats on the new solo record. I know that you've put out a lot of music over the years, but I don't know. I feel like this one in particular is one that you're most proud of, that you've been of an album that you've recorded in a long time. And, you know, especially with all the help that you had in this, you had a lot of people in our world of music join in with you on making this record.
Yeah, I mean, I always love the new ones, but this one feels special. And one of the reasons is after making 7 records in a row between my solo records and the Hold Steady with the same producer, Josh Kaufman, who I love. I had breakfast with him yesterday morning. But I felt like it was time to make a little change, and I asked my friend Adam Granduciel to do it. And he brought in a bunch of cast of characters, including a lot of his band members in his band, The War on Drugs, and some of our other friends. So it was, and it came out so well. And I think because I took a little chance and did something different, it was like more of even more elation at the end of it. And yeah, it feels really good. I'm very, very proud of it and happy to have it out in the world now.
Not only that, you had Kathleen Edwards, Sam Fender join you on a couple of these songs, a few of them actually. And, you know, again, I mean, with The War on Drugs, you know, you really can tell the sense of Adam Granduciel's, just his whole sound and aesthetic sort of filtered through your music, you know, the guitar playing and this, it's like Heartland rock meets Craig Finn in that way. And it's really quite good. It's a different sort of sound, but it works and it's excellent.
It's funny, you know, with Adam, I've known Adam since 2009. The Hold Steady brought The War on Drugs on their first U.S. tour, and we've been friends ever since. And he, as I understand it, approaches music way differently than I do. He goes on a sonic journey. He puts tons of music down. He takes things away, he adds more. He changes the tempo. It's all, and then eventually, you know, maybe 100 tracks in, he figures out the song and, you know, writes words and, you know, and I'm the exact opposite. I have 3 pages of lyrics and 1 chord, and I'm trying to figure out the second chord. So I thought maybe meeting in the middle might be interesting. It turned out one of the better decisions I've made.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a little consternation maybe on how you were guys going to make this work or join those 2 vastly different approaches. But
it's funny too.
Was it easy the way it came together?
Yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing is, like, I was just going to say is, for one, you know how like you watch Behind the Music or something and people say it was a very difficult record to make. This was not that. It was so easy. Yeah. It was like a lot of fun. It was pleasant. I like hanging out with them. And I do think that there's, at some level, the 10-second elevator pitch it's Craig Finn meets War on Drugs. Yeah. You know, it's kind of like,
what could go wrong?
It doesn't sound exactly like that, but there's elements of both, and they come together nicely, I think.
I would agree. It is really a perfect blend in the way that these songs work themselves out here on this new album. And again, I just want to mention Anthony LaMarca, the one non-Philadelphia member of The War on Drugs, who's from Youngstown and a Summit member. And what was it like working with him on this record?
Well, Anthony, when I first went out and said, Adam, you should produce this record, who, by the way, hadn't really produced, I think he'd produced 1 record 10 years before.
Yeah.
So it wasn't an obvious choice, but I said, you know, I think you can do it. And I also wanted to hang out in LA where he lives. So it was perfect. But he said, come back in 2 weeks and Anthony and Dave will be there. They were working on some War on Drugs music together. So my first session, Anthony and Dave Hartley were there, and Anthony played a bunch of everything: drums, guitar, I think some keys. I lost track. He was playing so much. He's an incredible musician.
He is. He literally does it all. Yeah, for sure.
So it was awesome, and he really helped kick off the record.
Yeah, and just being around all those guys had to be a really, really cool thing. Had you known Adam for a while?
Yeah, so since 2009, we brought him on tour. The whole Steady brought the War on Drugs on tour. Actually, it goes worse than that, though, because we asked him to do a European tour, and this is before we met him. I just heard their record, and I liked it. And that was in late 2008. Mm-hmm. And they went over early to play one show in London before the tour got started. And on the eve of the tour, one of my band members got very, very ill, and we canceled the whole tour, stranding them in Europe. So that's an auspicious beginning to a friendship.
Yeah, well,
but we made it up to them by bringing them to the U.S. a couple months later, and it's fun. It's fun to think about because now I've seen the War on Drugs at Madison Square Garden.
Right.
But there were some very humble shows on that tour.
Yeah.
And they were not the juggernaut that they are now.
Well, they certainly have grown to that. Speaking of juggernauts, for you personally, you've had a little bit of touring with this new record coming out. You actually did some shows with Bob Mould, who, a fellow Minnesotan. I'm sure that had to be a surreal experience for you.
It was. Bob Mould is an absolute hero, and it was beautiful to be on the road with him. And I sort of had to keep, pinching myself, reminding myself. I would tell the story on the stage that the first and just about only time I ever did a stage dive was at a Husker Du concert in Minneapolis. And I said, Bob, you guys played the song Celebrated Summer, and I was so moved that I had to jump on stage and jump off it. And I guess that's one way of showing respect.
There you go. I think that's the right thing to do. I'm sure he appreciated that. We have Craig Finn here joining us for a Wayside Furniture Blind & Sons Studio C session for our Summit members, passing through our area in support of his 6th album titled Always Been. That's out now on Tamarack Recordings via 30 Tigers. Craig, let's hear another song. What do you have for us next?
I'm going to play People of Substance. And I wanted to say this whole record, the first song I played was the first song I wrote, and it concerns a guy who is a former priest, and he's only a former priest because he joined the priesthood without ever having faith or believing in God. And while he was successful for it for a small amount of time, long enough to build a family and a congregation, it all comes crashing down. And the record kind of is about him trying to piece it all back together. And that first song, he's wandering the Delaware shore, trying to figure out what comes next. And this song is about the same guy. It's the second song on the record. And he's talking to his ex and saying he's all better now. And the listener can decide whether we believe him or not. Dana, I don't get depressed anymore. So possibly December on the Delaware shore. Maybe missing numbers on the motel doors, the toy section at this drugstore. Otherwise, I'm pretty much cured. I've been getting out of bed before noon now. Gonna find a new place pretty soon now. The whole thing's moving uptown, and I'm sorry about the way that I scared you. Sorry that I wasn't in touch since. Spend way too much time on people without any substance. And I decided that I'm gonna push forward. I'm committed to making the change. But you gotta remember I never go out in the rain. And it's been raining all day, and my jacket got nicked from the coat check. The curtains can't keep out the gray. These umbrellas that you get at the drugstore always blow the wrong way. Well, Dana, I don't drink nearly as much, 1 or 2 nights at the week at the most. I know I used to be such a monster. The city's still lousy with ghosts. So I'm sorry about that fight in the taxi. That probably just wasn't my night. If you just agree to come see me, I could try to make it alright. I decided that I'm gonna back off now. I heard you turn that old boy into a husband. And you're out in the county hanging out with some people of substance. Okay, now I'm done with the breakdowns, but the winter's pretty weird here at the shore. You never really told me what it was you cut me off for, and I'm still not sure. So I decided that I'd call and just check in, 'cause if I was good enough for you back then, you shouldn't be ashamed to bring me around to your new friends. I've been asking around for some sort of system to trust in, and maybe you could put me in touch with some people of substance. I spend way too much time on people without any substance. I spend way too much time on people without any substance.
That's Craig Finn and the new song People of Substance, one that we're big fans of here at the Summit FM. We've been playing that one quite a bit here lately. Craig Finn joining our Summit members for a Wayside Furniture Blind & Son Studio C session in support of his new solo record, Always Been, which is available now on Shamrock Recordings via 30 Tigers. And Craig, you sort of alluded to this just moments ago. This album is something that, as you've explained, is it's just an all-encompassing narrative with songs that have actual characters that come and go from song to song, all resurfacing to kind of give different viewpoints. And, you know, it's almost like chapters of a book in the way that this sort of ties in together, all of it together. All this detail, though, but how long does it take for something like that to manifest itself, for you to take it to another level with an all-encompassing character-driven thing like that?
Well, I think in this one, it wasn't that difficult. I wrote that first song, Bethany. I thought it was so rich that I thought I could keep writing songs about this guy from different angles and telling stories in different ways.
And again, the title character for that song, a priest who doesn't really believe in the religion that he's preaching.
A priest who is a sort of a priest, a fallen priest, whose thing came crashing down, in part due to his lack of faith. And I kept writing songs about this same guy, and it kind of developed. And at first I was like, is this a concept record? And then I thought, you know, mostly concept records seem to be about a guy who saves rock and roll, and this guy doesn't save rock and roll, so probably not a concept record. But it's funny though, there are a few songs that don't on the record that don't deal with this. But I very much consider them in the same world, but might be smaller stories. And when I told the guy who manages me in the Hold Steady, I said, yeah, so there's like, you know, if there's 11 songs, there's 8 that really deal with this, and then there's these other ones that I sort of see as bottle episodes. So maybe it's kind of like a Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoon. And he said, that's very dated and not very hip. Why don't you say it's like Pulp Fiction? So it's like one or the other. But yeah, so
depending on the generation.
But yeah, depending on your age and what you think is cool. I like Rocky and Bullwinkle. But yeah, so it is very much a narrative record. And I just found it deep enough that it wasn't that difficult to go back and keep writing songs about this person.
Well, you've pretty much summed it up. I mean, that's what these are. They're expertly crafted, long-form rock narratives that you've created. And, you know, I've admired your music from afar, and you're so good at that. I mean, seriously, it's a thing of beauty, the way that you can bring all that together, especially with the emotional connections that can happen with that. I guess one way to put that would be like destroying you with feels and things like that. I don't know. I mean, it's really fascinating how you do this, and I'm just curious how you come across that part where you really lay on the emotion really thick. For example, the current song to radio now is called Luke and Leanna, and from the very first second, you are dropped into a world of just normal grown-ups going through stuff. And it's like, you know them, or you could relate to some people that you know like that, but you don't, and it's just a tale being told from these strangers.
When I first started writing songs, especially when I first started writing songs for my band, The Hold Steady, I was really interested in people making really bad decisions and following them to their very terrible conclusions. And I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten way more interested in people who are trying to do the right things, but still are coming up short in some way, because that is the people I'm seeing often in my own in my own life, my own family, my own friends,
Yeah.
etc. And so I think, your perspective, I think when you make records, it's almost like marking your height against the wall in the kitchen as a kid.
Yeah.
But instead of getting taller, your emotional sort of, perspective changes.
Right.
And so that's why I think it's interesting to keep writing and keep writing. And that's something I very much do. I sit down with my coffee every morning and I turn on the computer and until about lunchtime, try to be creative and try to put things on page. And then, the good thing about being in music is no one really calls till about noon. So then you start picking up the phone.
Yeah, you got some time to yourself there to focus. Amazing. Just fantastic with singer-songwriter Craig Finn joining us here for a Wayside Furniture Blend & Son Studio C session for our members. The new album out now titled Always Been. Go pick it up. It's out on Tamarack Recordings via 30 Tigers. Craig Finn passing through our part of the world on your way to Chicago, which, again, we'll get to later. I'm very curious about this, but we got another song coming up for you here for us. Craig, what do you have here for us next?
Yeah, this is I'm basically going down the line here. This is the third song on the record. It's called Crumbs. And what this one is, in the first song, Bethany, he talks about being on the Delaware shore, living in his parents' beach house while they're not there because it's the off season. But sometimes they do come there and he has to leave. And he goes to his sister's, who lives on the fringe of Philadelphia with her daughter. And so I thought, when I was sitting there like writing, I was like, well, what goes on in that house? And this is kind of a scene report from over there. My sister has a daughter, doesn't look much like her, looks more like the father she won't see. She's mostly on her phone these days, she's got a couple friends her age, some secrets that she died to try to keep. When I'm staying in their guest room, I can hear her in the next room, the whispers and the silence and the sighs. She doesn't eat much breakfast, a single slice of toast at most, watches from the corners of her eyes. And there's crumbs around the corners of her mouth, and you can hear the highway from their house. The traffic sounds like water in a river rushing south. We'll never win this war, but maybe we can wait it out. We'll never win this war, but maybe we can wait it out. Her mother is my sister, she's a fighter, but she's tired now. The third shift's such a bitch to decent sleep. On Sundays she puts perfume on and waltzes with the vacuum on, sucks up the destruction of the week. In the kitchen there's a radio, she sings along the one she knows, remembers back when some of these were new, when the girls all chose a guy from the dances at the Y. Felt like that was what you're supposed to do. Now all those choices seem a little grim, violent, wild, or disengaged and dim. The highway goes forever, but your funds will fence you in, paying bills and stubbing out generic super slims. The heirs, they put the yellow in her hair and teeth and skin. Her husband was a contractor, a hunter and a fly fisher. Never raised a hand, he just withdrew. So far inside his head that you'd barely even notice him. Ghost that's usually in the other room. Eventually they started sleeping separately. Eventually it didn't even hurt. Last winter he moved out to his brother's house. Eventually he stopped going to work. And now she hasn't seen a check in 7 months. And they're living off of credit cards and crumbs. Pretty sure her daughter has been meeting up with boys. We'll never win this war, but maybe we won't get destroyed. She's wishing that that highway wouldn't make that goddamn noise. She doesn't really trust her daughter's friends. She's happy that I'm helping out with the rounds. So we stay up late and talk about the way it was before. We can maybe wait it out, but we'll never win this war. We can maybe wait it out, but we'll never win this war. We can maybe wait it out, but we'll never win this war.
Another great one from Craig Finn here in Studio C for our Summit members. This has been a terrific Wayside Furniture Blend & Sons Studio C session so far, as Craig Finn is very kind enough to join us in support of his new record, Always Been, that solo album out now on Tamarack Recordings via 30 Tigers. And, Craig, I have to ask you this too, with your lyrical and storytelling prowess and just the ability to drop us into a scene that we're emotionally invested in these characters, or at least very, very curious about them, empathetic to what they're going through. Who were some of your influences growing up regarding, that and some of the other music that just sort of struck you growing up, maybe influenced your songwriting, your sense of detail, all of that?
I think I would have given you a different answer maybe a few years ago, but a couple years back, I was at the Newport Folk Festival, and they had this tribute to Paul Simon, and he wasn't supposed to play, but rumors were he was going to, and sure enough, after 8 songs, he walked out. And I was watching, and I thought, and he was doing Slip Sliding Away, or maybe it was before he came out and the band was doing it, but I was thinking about it, and it's just, there's that song. My parents had that record, Paul Simon's Greatest Hits, and there's that song that says, I know a man, he came from my hometown. He wore his passion for a woman like a thorny crown. He said, Dolores, I live in fear. So I was like, oh my God. For one, thorny crown, I've always liked the Bible in my songs. Mm-hmm. And number 2, he dropped that proper name, Dolores, in the middle of the verse, and I do that all the time. You do, yeah. So I think I was like, "Oh my God, Paul Simon!" And then you just didn't realize it. Then I moved to New York and started wearing baseball hats and losing my hair, and I haven't grown that much taller. So maybe it's the right guy to pick. But no, I mean that's one. Any songs that tell a story, I loved that. When my parents' records. My favorite records were the ones that I could read along to, that printed the lyrics. So like story songs like, Paul Simon, Lincoln Duncan is my name. Here's that song, Duncan, I think it's called. Billy Joel, Scenes from Italian Restaurant. Yeah. This epics that you could follow along and like they were a real narrative. And I was always a voracious reader too. And, short stories, Raymond Carver, John Cheever. Those are amazing songwriting tools because a short story, like a good song, has to make a lot of decisions about what to put in and what to leave out. That's true. That tension that you're pulling at is the power. Mm-hmm. And I often feel like songwriting is like Jenga. Like you can take one away or you can put one on and it all comes crumbling down. So you're trying to find that perfect balance of detail to what to put in, what to leave out.
That's actually a really good analogy for songwriting because, I'm no musician. It's all magic to me. But yeah, short story, that analogy, that choosing what to keep and leave out, and that's a delicate balance, I'm sure.
Yeah. And it's not like a novel where you can go and, describe the weather for 3 pages.
Right.
The song would be over by then.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I wanted to bring this up as well. You have a special relationship with 2 of our members here in the room. They're sitting in the front row. You actually married them as the ordained minister that you are. Putting them on the spot here. What do you remember about that day in the day of wedded bliss for our friends Kurt and Jessica?
It's funny because I agreed to marry my friends Kurt and Jessica. I've done a few weddings. Mm-hmm. I can't remember if I've done one since, but
wow, you retired with them.
I've done with friends. I've done it with as I got older and realized that I was someone who thought about faith and spirituality, but didn't have a lot of religious friends and didn't really subscribe to any particular didn't subscribe perfectly to any major religion. That maybe I could be useful in some of these cases. So I think I've done about 8. And what do I remember? I because I wanted to go. I remember being nervous too. I remember reading my lines over, and I remember I had written it all out, but I taped it into a Bible so it looked good,
In larger fonts so you could really read it, yes.
Yeah. I remember hanging out with the DJ. It was really fun.
Well, how did this all come together? How did you meet them, or how did they contact you?
I knew Jessica just because she had been to many Hold Steady shows and my solo show, so we became friends through that. And then you asked me, I guess, is the short answer, right? To do the wedding. No. Well. Oh, wait, yeah. I'm blowing the story. This is actually even better. Sorry, I'm usually a good storyteller, but Kurt, I was playing a show in Chicago, and Kurt called me, and Jessica was gonna come, and he called and said, I would like to come to your show. She doesn't know I'm coming, and I'm going to ask her to marry me. And I said, well, we should do it on stage. And what do you need from me? It's something like that. And then he showed up, and we hit him. And not easy to hide because it was a daytime festival in a Chicago street. So there wasn't cavernous places to hide. It was kind of stand behind this. For a while, quite a while. But eventually we got to the part and she was up front and I said, I want to thank Jess for coming out. And, I have to admit, I sometimes tell the same jokes. She's been to a few shows in a row, so I'm sort of embarrassing. So I thought today we'd do something different. And that's when I brought Kurt out. And he got on one knee. It was very, very romantic. I'm kind of tearing up thinking about it. But and then I thought, hey, I can marry you too. Let's not end it here.
Yeah, I love that. What a great story. That's amazing.
It was a beautiful thing.
Well, we have one more song for you here. Craig, what do you have for us next here in Studio C?
So this is a song called Shamrock. And I want to tell you about this real quick because I love nicknames. In songs. I like songs about people with nicknames. And this song's about people I knew in my hometown of Minneapolis, Sean and Sabrina. And Sean had a nickname, Shamrock. And the thing about Shamrock, he always wore one of those green satin Boston Celtics jackets. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, I don't know if they called him Shamrock because he wore the jacket or he wore the jacket because they call him Shamrock. I'm 100% he'd never been to Ireland. They didn't call him that because of that. And I'm 99% sure he hadn't been to Boston either. He was a stay in South Minneapolis kind of guy. But Shamrock and Sabrina fell in love, and this is their story. She met him after summer school. The Hiawatha bus stop in a knockoff Celtics jacket. Said his crew, they call him Shamrock. His mother died when he was 5, and his dad's some sort of drug cop. But the apple sometimes rolls way down the hill. Sabrina claimed the South Side, but really she's from Richfield. These invisible divisions never seem like such a big deal. She's been working at a wine bar, making jokes about the mouthfeel. She sometimes takes 20s from the till. Unprovoked and unadorned, white t-shirts and cut-off shorts. Summer takes a shapeless form after dark and Powderhorn. If you pull your funds together, then you're barely ever broke. Walking up to SA to get smokes. In the spring they found some shambles. In the South suburban sprawl, Sabrina's taking classes, Shamrock's hanging drywall. but his fingernails keep falling off and he comes home mean and sore. And every day he hates it more and more. So the years go by and life goes on. Nothing really happens. School became a drag, so she went back to be a waitress. There isn't much to sit on when the old crew comes to visit, so they all get high and pass out on the floor. And Shamrock just stops working. Said it's such a meager pittance. Once they take the taxes out, it's barely even worth it. And the TV's set to static. There's drums off in the distance. Their daughter's sleeping in a dresser drawer. Unprescribed and unfulfilled. Application special skills. She admits she sometimes still takes 20s from the till. And Shamrock's sick of trying to smile when he's holding in the smoke. Got talking to this guy he sorta knows. A call came in this evening from the county credit union. 2 guys with masks and pistols crashed in as they were closing. By the time the cruisers came around, they had grabbed the cash and scattered. The cameras always capture all the action, so a trooper pulled them over. And a vehicle description had a Hampton Inn in Hudson, about a mile into Wisconsin. When the footage ran on News at 9, she could tell that it was Shamrock. A ragged satin jacket that says Boston. Unrehearsed and unprepared to be the only one who cares for a daughter who keeps asking about her father. They pulled their funds together. Somehow she's still broke, walking up to Speedway to get smokes. Walking up to Speedway to get smokes. All right, thanks for having me.
That was outstanding. Craig Finn here in Studio C for another session and in front of a room full of Summit members. This has been a really, really great Wayside Furniture Blind & Son Studio C session. And yeah, Craig Finn, you're passing through here. We appreciate you stopping in here to do this. You're on your way to Chicago for something called the Old Town School of Folk Music. What exactly is that?
So the Old Town School of Folk Music is a place in Chicago that teaches classes and does programming about folk music, and also as a venue. And I'm going there for a gentleman named Joe Pug, who's doing as a podcast called The Working Songwriter. And I've been on the podcast before, and he's doing a series of shows and songwriting workshops. And so I'm doing tomorrow night a performance, and then Sunday night I'm actually teaching a workshop, which I'm getting my act together on. It's funny because I've done these things before, and I honestly, my advice is always that if it sounds good to you, it's probably good. So I'm going to figure out a way to say that for an hour.
We'll be preparing for that on the drive there, I'm sure.
Very slow.
Right. Well, Craig Finn, you agreed to do a bonus fifth song, but you left it open-ended as a wild card, and I don't know what that means. I don't know if you know what that means. What are you thinking?
I'll talk about it a little bit. But first, I want to tell you one thing. Because I do have some merch out there. And alongside the book, the record, I wrote a book called Lousy with Ghosts, and it's short stories. It's 11 short stories, 11 songs on the record. Each story is from the point of view of a character on the record, but not necessarily the main character. And I'm really proud of it. It's a cool thing and goes along with the record well. So if you're interested, I am here. I just want to do a plug because it's a good Father's Day gift, and that's coming up. You know?
Just saying.
But, I was saying I like nicknames. And this next song is off my last record, actually. It's about a guy called the Amaro Kid. Or it's not just a guy, it's a legend. And he, as you might imagine, is from Amarillo, Texas. But you don't get the nickname the Amarillo Kid if you stay in Amarillo because everyone's the Amarillo Kid there. You have to go somewhere else. And he goes to Buffalo, New York, and that's where he becomes the Amarillo Kid, the legendary Amarillo Kid. After I wrote the song, I started playing it for people. I was pretty proud of it. And I played it at some shows, and then some people, especially some Texans came up to me and said, hey, down in Texas, we say Amarillo. And I said, oh, I know that. But I said, you know what? Up in Buffalo, New York, they say all kinds of crazy stuff. So saved. Anyways, this is about the Amarillo Kid and I guess the way he became such a legend. I was born down in the handle. I was brought up by the strap. When the devil starts to show up in your dreams, then it's hard to get your dreams back. And if I lost my sense of wonder, you can blame it on the banks. Well, the scammers and the skimmers, they swim around together, and every dealer has a fish tank. The numbers never lie, but they also never tell the whole truth. Deanna's in the passenger side with the Buffalo Blues. She said the guys that you'll be meeting with won't be easily impressed if you hold things where you're coming from. Wonder why you left. I used to play first-person shooters. I'd spend days inside those games. Well, the speed made my head like a cockpit computer till the wings came off the plane. And I was deep and dead and desperate. I met some Hesher and his henchmen, put on my only suit and I walked up to the interview. I applied for the position. When the whole thing finally happened, they flew me out to Buffalo, New York. Well, the terms were much different than what we'd first discussed, but I was grateful for the work. Deanna was the girl that used to ride around and wait in the car. And the gig was pretty good. They just always need to know where you are. Well, they gifted me a CRV and a decent place to live, a pistol and a nickname. I'm the Amarillo Kid. Dispatch and deliver. It's tough to drive in winter weather. 30 minutes or the next one is free. Still feels like forever. Deanna, now I know that you were only there to watch me work. And I didn't see staying on just to maintain the way that we were. Well, the ashtray is the bathtub. There's a stovetop kitchenette. The wallpaper is jaundiced, but it's still a step ahead. Didn't think they'd have the wherewithal to hunt me down out west. I sold half of it in Wichita. I'm wrapping up the rest. So darling, sit down on the bed, maybe have another hit, and listen to the legend, the Amaro Kid. Listen to the legend of the Amaro Kid. Thanks so much for being a part of this tonight. It's really, really nice. Great to be back in Akron. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, everyone, for being here.